Tying her scarf around her neck, she does a little knock on the door even though it's already open. Good to go, she says. Yeah, says Connell. Thanks for everything. Lauren says Marini. See you next week. Connell is already heading out the kitchen door when his mother says, You can say goodbye, can't you? He turns to look over his shoulder but finds he cannot actually look Marini in the eye. So he addresses himself to the floor instead. Right, bye, he says. He doesn't wait to hear her reply. In the car, his mother puts on her seatbelt and shakes her head. You could be a bit nicer to her, she says. She doesn't exactly have an easy time of in school. He puts the keys in the ignition, glances in the rear view. I am nice to her, he says. She is actually a very sensitive person, says Lauren. Can we talk about something else? Lauren makes a face. He stares out the windshield and pretends not to see. 3 weeks later, February 2011. She sits at her dressing table, looking at her face in the mirror. Her face lacks definition around the cheeks and jaw. It's a face like a piece of technology, and her two eyes are cursors blinking. Or it's reminiscent of the moon reflected in something wobbly and oblique. It expresses everything at once, which is the same as expressing nothing. To wear makeup for this occasion would be, she concludes, embarrassing. Without breaking eye contact with herself, she dips her finger in an open pot of clear lip balm and applies it. Downstairs, when she takes her coat off the hook, her brother Alan comes out from the living room. Where are you going? He says. Out? Where's out? She puts her arms through the sleeves of her coat and adjusts the collar. She is beginning to feel nervous now and hopes her silence is communicating insolence rather than uncertainty. Just out for a walk, she says. Alan moves to stand in front of the door. Well, I know you're not going out to meet friends, he says, because you don't have any friends, do you? No, I don't. She smiles now, a placid smile, hoping that his gesture of submission will placate him and he will move away from the door. Instead, he says, What are you doing that for? What? She says. This weird smile you are doing. He mimics her face, contorted into an ugly green teeth barred, though he is grinning. The force and extremity of this impersonation make him look angry. Are you happy that you don't have friends? He says. No. Still smiling, she takes two small steps backwards and then turns and walks towards the kitchen, where there is a patio door onto the garden. Alan walks after her. He grabs her by the upper arm and tugs her back from the door. She feels her jaw tighten. His fingers compress her arm through her jacket. If you go crying to mom about this, says Ellen. No, no, says Marianne. No, I'm just going out for a walk now, thank you. He releases her and she slips out through the patio door, closing it behind her. Outside, the air feels very cold and her teeth start to chatter. She walks around the side of the house, down the driveway, and out into the street. Her arms is throbbing where he grabbed it. She takes her phone from a pocket and composes a text, repeatedly hitting the wrong key, deleting and retyping. Finally, she sends it. On my way. Before she puts the phone back, she receives a reply. Cool, see you soon. At the end of last term, the school soccer team reached the final of some competition, and everyone in the year had to take the last three classes off to go and watch them. Marianne had never seen them play before. She had no interest in sports and suffered anxiety related to physical education. In the bus on the way to the match, she just listened to her headphones. No one spoke to her out the window. Black cattle, green meadows, white houses, white brown roof tiles. The football team were all together at the top of the bus, drinking water and slapping each other on the shoulders to raise morale. Marianne had the sense that her real life was happening somewhere very far away, happening without her. She didn't know if she would ever find out where it was and become part of it. She had that feeling in school often, but it wasn't accompanied by any specific images of what the real life might look or feel like. All she knew was that when it started, she wouldn't need to imagine it anymore. It stayed dry for the match. They had been brought there for the purpose of standing at the sidelines and cheering. Marian was near the goalpost with Karen and some of other girls. Everyone other than Marian seemed to know the school chants off by heart somehow, with lyrics she had never heard before. By half time, it was still nil all, and Miss Kenny handed around boxes of juice and energy bars. For the second half, the ends changed around, and the school forwards were playing near where Marian was standing. Connell was the center forward. She could see him standing there in his football kit, the shiny white shorts, the school jersey with number 9 on the back. He had very good posture, more so than any of the other players. His figure was like a long, elegant line drawn with a brush. When the ball moved towards their end of the pitch, he tended to run around and maybe throw one of his hands in the air. And then he went back to standing still. It was pleasurable to watch him, and she didn't think he knew or cared where she was standing. After school someday, she could tell him she had been watching him, and he would laugh at her and call her weird. At 70 minutes, Aidan Kennedy brought the ball up the left side of the pitch and crossed it over to Connell, who took a shot from the corner of the penalty area over the heads of the defenders, and it spun into the back of the net. Everyone screamed. Even Marianne, and Karen threw her arms around Marianne's waist and squeezed it. They were cheering together. They had seen something magical which dissolved the ordinary social relations between them. Miss Kenney was whistling and stamping her feet. On the pitch, Connell and Aidan embraced like reunited brothers. Connell was so beautiful. It occurred to Marianne how much she wanted to see him having sex with someone. It didn't have to be her, it could be anybody. It would be beautiful just to watch him. She knew these were the kind of thoughts that made her different from other people in school and weirder. Marianne's classmates all seemed to like school so much and find it normal to dress in the same uniform every day, to comply at all times with arbitrary rules, to be scrutinized and monitored for misbehavior. This is normal to them. They have no sense of the school as an oppressive environment. Marian had a row with the history teacher, Mr. Kerrigan, last year because he caught her looking out a window during class and no one in the class took her side. It seemed so obviously insane to her then that she should have to dress up in a costume every morning and be herded around a huge building all day, and that she wasn't even allowed to move her eyes where she wanted. Even her eye movements fell under the jurisdiction of school rules. You are not learning if you are staring out the window daydreaming, Mr. Kerrigan said. Marianne, who had lost her temper by then, snapped back. Don't delude yourself. I have nothing to learn from you. Connell said recently that he remembered the incident and that at the time he would felt she was being harsh on Mr. Kerrigan, who was actually one of the more reasonable teachers. But I see what you are saying, Connell added, about feeling a bit imprisoned in the school. I do see that. He should have let you look out the window. I would agree there. You were not doing any harm.